Good evening, welcome to another edition of the Gersnet Podcast, the independent Rangers podcast by fans for fans, where all the content is absolutely free. Coming to you in association with Forrest Precision Engineering. I'm your host tonight, Brian Archer, and as always, we'd encourage you to get onto the Gersnet website, check out our forums for all your latest Rangers news and discussion. We're live tonight on the YouTube channel, and we'd ask that you continue to share the podcast on social media, spread the word, and please subscribe to the YouTube channel. Before I introduce my guest for tonight, I need to give another mention to our partners over at Forrest Precision Engineering. They're a Glasgow-based engineering company who have been a big commercial supporter of Rangers for a number of years, and we're delighted to have them supporting the podcast. If you want more information about them, please visit their website at www.forrestprecisioneng.com. They also have a stunning executive lounge in the Ibrox main stand, and for more information on that, email the club at hospitality@rangers.co.uk. Right, now to bring in my guest for tonight. Joining me is Stewart Weir. Stewart, how you doing?
Good evening, Brian. Yes, doing well. Enjoying the summer weather in April. Hopefully we get a summer in July and in June as well.
Yeah, it has been a nice change actually. It was roasting here today, to be honest. It's been quite a nice week, to be honest, weather-wise, so hopefully it continues. It also added a nice element to last night's game, so that was nice.
Yeah, shirt sleeve summer football in April. I think that could catch. Maybe that's what they meant when they wanted to introduce summer football.
Yeah, I definitely think that could catch on. It was definitely a case for it in Scotland, summer football, to be honest. I'm a big fan. Much prefer that than going in December and freezing cold weather. But anyway.
Covered.
Well, maybe. On to last night's game, Stuart. Obviously, first leg, quarter final. I think we all kind of went in thinking, big task, but not impossible. First thing you chat about is the team lineup. Few surprises in there, a few big calls. Barry Ferguson did promise in his post-match press conference after the previous game that he would make a series of changes. Do you think it was true to his word?
Evidently, yeah. I think as well, the way the results had gone, especially in the performance against Hibs, I think Barry Ferguson had a bit of a free hit last night. And as much as the fans were calling for changes, he said he would make changes. There wasn't that much of a surprise when he made those changes. And most of them, you would have to say, worked out. It was a good all round performance from Rangers. Overcoming even being depleted by a man so early in the game. They managed to ride that out and got a result which I don't think many people saw it ending 0-0. Maybe a draw. I think most people thought that Athletic would score at Ibrox, and it worked out they didn't. So you go into the next leg, it's all square, 0-0, everything to play for. So a very good result all in. And just to mention, if he's listening or watching, Darren, who I met in Lark Hall yesterday, who said confidently it would finish 0-0, and I kind of sconced at that. But then again, I forgot that even a broken clock is right twice a day, so he's bound to get one right after all these years. But no, I think a lot of people were confident Rangers could still put in a performance and put in a shift, and that's what they had to do.
Yeah, definitely, and I hope hope Darren had some money on that there as well.
I think he was saving it up actually for the second leg. I think that's why he wanted it 0-0, so he had something to justify actually going to Bilbao for. So it worked out well.
Yeah, he's definitely got an exciting trip to look forward to next week. The headline change, and it was the one that many people were kind of talking about before the game, and they were probably most looking forward to seeing what way Barry Ferguson would go, was the goalkeeper situation.
Yeah.
It was spoken on here over the last few weeks about Butland's dipping form. Ferguson made the call to drop him. Were you surprised by that call, or do you think it was kind of inevitable given the form that Butland's been in?
I think, well, a number of things actually. I think it was inevitable. I think it hinted that there would be a change would be made. And again, I go back to the point I made earlier. It was almost like a free hit for Barry Ferguson. He's able to make that change. If he stuck with Butland and it had gone catastrophically wrong, people would have lambasted Barry Ferguson for talking a good game but not actually acting it out. If it had gone horribly wrong, having made the change, the fact is he would have got away with it because and he played to the gallery, he played to the fans and what they wanted. And he was able to hold his hands up and say, listen, this is what you wanted and this is what I did. So you can't have it both ways. In the end, Liam Kelly turns out to be the hero. And Barry Ferguson made the change. I don't think he would have seen it, coming off from as well as it did. It looked inspired. Kelly got his left boot to the ball at the penalty, but it was a big call, but one that had to be made. You just cannot. You cannot concede goals in the way that Rangers were conceding goals through Butland's errors when you're not actually, converting at the other end. And over a number of games, he might have got away with one or two of them. But ultimately, in the last few weeks, there's been less tolerance as far as that goes. And, against Hibs, if you throw one in there and you don't score, you're losing the game. And, and again, Barry Ferguson, I think, had given him more than enough opportunities to redeem himself, and it just wasn't forthcoming.
Yeah, it was definitely a bold decision by Ferguson, and to be fair, he has said since he came in that he's not afraid to make the difficult decisions, and I think that's probably one of the more difficult ones that he'll have to make. Another kind of surprising one for me was starting Bailey Rice in midfield. I didn't expect him to throw a youngster in on that stage, but it was kind of a mark of the confidence that he must have in him, and Ferguson's sort of been there himself many years ago, of being that kind of young midfielder coming through and playing on that sort of stage. But were you surprised to see Rice starting such a big game?
I think I was more surprised at him, but for the sort of logic that he used there in terms of Barry Ferguson in his own career and getting pitched in at the deep end. The thing was, when Barry Ferguson made his debut, he had some experienced players around him. And I don't think that was what was happening last night. I thought Rice acquitted himself well during the course of the game. He did what was asked of him, as everybody did. I think all in all, the entire Rangers performance last night probably merited about a 7.5 or an 8 out of 10. Okay, they didn't score, they didn't have any advantage, but they gave so much in terms of graft and effort. I think everybody comes out with sort of plus points at the end.
Yeah, definitely. Now, it's very much like Rangers to take a difficult task and make it even more difficult, particularly this season. And we did just that inside the first 10 minutes when Robin Propper gets himself sent off for a kind of last-ditch challenge. Now, I didn't get a good view of this at the time because I'm sat quite far away, so I was kind of surprised to see it go to VAR. And the thing I noticed last night at the stadium was with the VAR, they seem to take an awful long time to tell you that it's going to VAR and why it's going to VAR. But having seen it back, for me, it's one of those where you'll probably get different referees giving different opinions on that one. It's not really a clear cut, that's a definite red for me. Were you surprised to see VAR get involved, given that we're always told about clear and obvious errors?
Yeah, I think the clear and obvious part of it is no longer in the vocabulary. I think clear and obvious came out at the start. I think now it's like more, is this a good idea or not? They were taking so long with the VAR decisions last night. I actually thought they were saying, let's go to VAR now, let's invent it. It was agonising, the delay and the wait, and that's not what it's supposed to be about. Then I think it was a red card. I would agree with you that different eyes would see things differently. What I would say is, and a great many people went out on a limb a wee bit saying that was never a red card and watch this and watch that. I've always flipped these sort of decisions and these calls and reverse engineer them a wee bit. If that was your team and it was your striker going through and the opposition defender had taken him down, would you be screaming for a red card? Yeah, you probably would actually. So to that end, I think maybe it was the right call. I'll agree with you that different referees. I thought the referee last night. There were some times he got decisions really spot on. Almost the more difficult the decision, the more he actually called it right. But I think there were one or two throughout the entire game that just left you shaking your head and or scratching your head and wondering either why VAR were involved or why he didn't have the balls to actually make the call himself and overrule it. I think that the whole mindset of the referee just now is if VAR comes in at any point in time, they feel they must have got it wrong and they have to agree with VAR. And I just wish some referees would actually stick to their guns and call it as they saw it.
Yeah, definitely. I also think with the timing thing, if it takes 6 replays and 3 slow-mos to come to a decision, you should probably stick with the on-field decision, whatever that may be.
Yeah, you're getting to the realms of JFK, in Dallas. Let's have a look at how many different ways he sort of keeled over or fell forward or fell backwards. That's not what it's about. You should be able to see these things and spot these things almost immediately. And I think, as I say, a few of the calls last night, you had to be a cross between, Inspector Cluzo and Poirot to come up with those kind of decisions. There were one or two of them were absolutely baffling, and I think they were actually baffling when VAR get involved and communicated back to the referee. I think he suddenly found himself having to explain that to players and explain it to the sort of the crowd as well. And he didn't look good. As I say, having looked really good in some of the decisions, he just looked an absolute fool when it came to the VAR.
Yeah, it was definitely not really a great night for the ref, to be honest. In terms of the player that got sent off, Robin Proper, do you think that's potentially the final chapter of his Rangers career? He's a player that we've kind of all said on these pods that he's struggled to adapt, particularly domestically. To be fair, his best performances have came in European games, but I think we've probably all felt that there's probably a return to the Eredivisie on the cards for him in the summer.
Yeah, I think since he arrived, he's split he split the support down the middle as to those who are wondering why he's there, and the other side wondering, who actually signed them. I think there were a few other defenders kicking around in Europe that you would have looked at before you would have gone anywhere near him. As it pans out, other people come in and do a job. I just don't think he's settled. I also don't think it'd be very easy for him to settle, given how many different sort of partners he's either played with or started with or then replaced and come in. You start with a different combination and that doesn't work, and then he makes a return. You either play, a group of matches and find out if that's it or not. You never bring people back, except Rangers have managed to do that, drop people, and then after 3 or 4 games, suddenly find that, well, maybe he was a good idea to start with, just bring him back, and you end up getting the same process of failure following failure.
Yeah, it's not been the easiest task for him to settle, as you say, and he's also had to the problem behind them with the goalkeeper's form completely dropping off a cliff, which I dare say hasn't helped the defence overall, to be honest. Obviously, after the red card coming so early, I don't mind saying I'm kind of fearing the worst at this point. It kind of changes our approach completely to the game. It turns it into a real kind of backs to the wall type job. Were you kind of a similar mind, and especially given our recent defensive record? I mean, let's be honest, we've been pretty appalling defensively, domestically in recent weeks, and I was I was fearing the worst, to be honest. What about you?
It went from oh no to suddenly oh no in block capitals. You were quite fearful of what might happen. Bizarrely, during the course of the match and watching it and thinking about it again today and talking to one or two people, I still wonder if the red card actually helped Rangers in some respects. I thought that when they went down to 10 men, it kind of galvanised the performance. And I think people, rather than maybe give up on tackles or tracking back or whatever it was, thought to themselves, I have to make this tackle and I have to track back because there's nobody behind me, even though there were people behind them. But we've lost a defender and a key defender. Therefore, we have to up our workload. We have to cut out the mistakes. We have to make sure that we, defensively were sound. And I think that's what they did. I mean, the thing when Rangers went down to 10 men, I thought at that point, yeah, they could hold out. But that flies in the face of everything you've seen over recent weeks, especially at Ibrox. The problem I always thought then after that was, how do you get a goal? It needs to come from either like a breakaway or a set piece, and I didn't see that happening against Bilbao, because one thing they were organised at was at set pieces. Forget this. The sort of zonal defence. They just had a couple of big guys going at it with their heads every time, and the ball came flying back out in either the same direction or 25 yards away from the goal. I thought they defended well when they were under pressure, but all in all, I've seen Rangers play with 11 men and never come anywhere close to keep a clean sheet. Unlike last night, when I thought after a while it was almost like, okay, you've ridden your luck, but you could actually get lucky over the 90 minutes.
Yeah, I actually thought it almost simplified the task for the team in that they kind of, once they go down to 10 men, they almost don't need to worry so much about having to go forward and create chances and work out how we're going to break this critical team down. It just became, right, backs to the wall. We kind of know how to do this. 2 backs of 4, let's just stay compact, do our jobs. And I thought 2 players that epitomised the kind of attitude you spoke about being willing to kind of do the hard yards was Hadji and Raskin. Now, Hadji didn't do much with the ball or going forward, but he was always there to back up his fullback. He put in some shift going back the way, and I thought Raskin equally gave a mature performance in midfield, particularly alongside Billy Rice, who probably needed a bit of coaching through the game.
Do you want to make a note of the date? It's the 11th of April, and I am going to praise James Tavernier. I thought Tavernier actually had a good game, a right good game. He's probably done a bit of Donald Trump and knocked the value of certain stocks down, namely Nico Williams. There'll be people saying, well, that's 20 million quid we've saved, because if you can't beat Tavernier, then who imagine coming up against really good players. I am joking there, but I thought he stuck to his task really, really well. Unfortunately, the only time he sort of switched off was at the start of the move that led to the goal that wasn't a goal in the penalty. He, for some reason, he decided he was going to applaud one of his teammates having made a challenge, and the ball, the runner and the ball went flying past them, and suddenly Rangers were caught on the hop. Going back to Hadji, I would wholly agree. he doesn't look like him, and they play totally different games. But watching him last night, there were parts of his game reminded me of Ian Ferguson, that he was really going to get stuck in, and he would hold the ball, you know, he would hold the ball at times where it was difficult to hold the ball, just to either alleviate the pressure or to bring other people into the game. And, the tackles, he was annoying when he was making tackles, because he'd make tackles and almost have a bit of a, not a dig, but he would have a follow through at whoever he tackled or challenged, just to knock them off the ball, or to knock, their belief or confidence a wee bit. And he put in a hell of a lot of work. And again, I think with Hadji, sometimes you look at him and think to yourself, this is where the wee bit of magic might come from. But ultimately, I think last night that was kept in the back pocket, and he just get really tore in amongst them, because again, he was one of the guys that knew that so much was riding on him doing a job and going above and beyond, especially in the midfield.
Yeah, definitely. And I hope Scott Bradley's listening to hear you praise James Tavernier, because I'm sure that'll be a one and only occurrence.
No, listen. I reckon I'm fair when it's deserved, and I thought he actually had a good game, like so many of them did. But again, if you make it simple and cut the errors out, and basically, he doesn't need to sound a bugle and make cavalry charges up the pitch. Just stick to where you're supposed to be in the pitch. Then he makes it simple for himself, and usually we get pass marks. It might be the one and only time, But again, I call it as I see it. I don't put certain colours of glasses on just to shade my eyes from the horror stories.
Yeah, no, I did think he played really well. To be honest, I was probably like many who was fearing the worst when it was Nico Williams against Tavernier, especially if it was going to be the Nico Williams that played for Spain in the summer tournament. I was kind of like, oh, that could be dangerous. But no, to be fair, he did play really well. So credit where it's due. You mentioned the disallowed goal that then turned into a penalty there. I don't really know where to start with this, because I've never seen anything like it in my life, really. And to be honest, the players look just as bemused. I sat right in front of the VAR box, and when the ref went over to VAR, Tav came over, and Tav looked absolutely bemused. Like, he had no clue what was going on. Nobody in the stadium had any clue what was going on. I don't really understand how you disallow a goal but then give them a penalty. And I've still yet to see an angle of the handball that would make me believe that it was a deliberate handball that actually should have been a penalty in the first place.
Correct in all those counts. I mean, I think, there was nothing untoward about it. It was just a bizarre sort of series of events, but it was almost as if, right, sorry, we can't give you that goal. We've had to rule the goal out, but just to make up for it, here's a penalty. And again, hence the bemused looks on the faces of the Rangers players. And you have to say, when the sort of cameras were panning around, there were equally puzzled faces from the Bilbao players, because they were jumping up and down trying to claim a goal, and then suddenly said, "Oh, wait a minute here, we better not shout too loud because we might get a penalty out of this." And lo and behold, they did. But it was a bizarre state of affairs. Again, I go back to, I am no fan of VAR, but VAR just made an absolute dog's dinner of that decision. It was literally like, let's try and see things that we think are there. Oh look, there it's there. See that wee brush of the arm. See that, see that, 2 millimeters that nobody else saw. This is what VAR for me is all about. It's like trying to re-referee the game, and it should have no part in it.
Yeah, just to go off script a bit, I'll be honest, I was all for VAR when it came in. I thought it could really help up here, but to be honest, I think it's ruining the game now. If there was an option to get rid of it and go back to just referees make decisions and we just cop for the fact that you're going to get the odd one wrong because, let's be honest, the referees aren't very good.
I want to go back to string crossbars. I don't. And referees only referee by gentlemen and by committee sort of type thing. I think that's where we should go to.
But VAR is almost like refereeing by committee because you've got the referee on the field that's made the decision. He's then talking to 2 or 3 people in his ear that have potentially got different opinions from him. So it is almost becoming like refereeing by committee. And he's then given 5 or 6 angles.
The problem I had right from the outset, and I still have the problem, is that if referees are incompetent on the pitch, why do you give them an office job? Because they're still going to be incompetent and they're still going to make calls that completely baffle and bemuse people, except they've now got the technology to back up those baffling calls. And, when it went to 90 minutes last night and the guy suddenly puts up, there's going to be another 12 minutes, you think to yourself, this is like NFL or basketball, let's just play another quarter and until we get a winner. Fortunately or unfortunately, there wasn't a winner. But there were some bizarre circumstances last night. I actually think in about 18 months' time, there'll be a report written about this game when VAR is being questioned again. And this might be one of the examples of how not to use it.
Yeah, definitely, yeah. Obviously, penalty is given. Thankfully for us, Kelly saves it. Just kind of puts a bit of a cherry on top of what was a good performance up to that point. Anyway, is he more than justified, the manager's selection at that point?
Well, yeah, simply because the manager doesn't have anywhere else to go. The manager's made the call, and it was a good save. He's dived, but he's kind of left that trailing leg. And actually, if you look at it, he actually has a bit of a kick at the ball. It's not as if it just hits him. He actually physically makes an effort to get his boot on the ball. Hence the reason why he saves it. Yeah, he's justified. Barry Ferguson's justified. I may, reiterate my earlier point. He's got a bit of a free hit in this one. He makes a call that the fans expected. If it comes off, great. If it doesn't, well, did you really trust Jack Butland? And that was a debate, or that was a question. It'll be interesting going forward to see how it pans out. I don't know if I'm alone in this, but you suddenly became acutely aware last night in 1 or 2 of the set pieces just how small he looked compared to Butland. Butland looks an imposing figure. When it's maybe an imposing figure, it's not really playing very well just now, but he still looked quite an imposing figure compared to Kelly. And I was worried sometimes at corners or free kicks it might just be swamped by numbers, or especially given the fact that the Rangers backline at times just get in the way of the goalkeeper. What they might do in terms of putting him off his game, but fortunately it worked out, and as you say, he became the hero of the moment.
Yeah, he certainly did. Going back to my previous point about Rangers taking a difficult task and making it even more difficult, the game would get even more difficult again for us in the final sort of 6 minutes of injury time when we went down to 9 men. Dujon Sterling going off with what's turned out to be a season-ending injury, unfortunately. Yeah. That's going to be a big miss for next week, isn't it?
It is, because for two reasons. One, he's played to a pretty decent standard, a pretty decent level throughout the entire season. But he's also one of these guys that can dovetail into different positions and play different roles. Be it right back, right-sided midfield, centre midfield, one of the right-sided of a 3-man central defence. So he can play a number of positions. We knew that because Philippe Clement tried to play him in all of those positions during the one game on occasions, and that made it really difficult for him. But when he's been given a specific role or task, he's stuck to it, and usually comes up with a kind of 6 or 7 out of 10 performance week in, week out. And he will be a miss because he did have that capacity or ability to have read the game quite well and break play up and then make a pass forward, or actually decide whether the ball was going forward or whether Rangers were actually going to keep possession, sort of type thing. And I think that kind of game management side of his of Sterling's game, I think that might be missed more than just his presence.
Yeah, definitely. Now, coming out of the stadium last night, at times it sort of felt like a win. Just the manner of the performance, the fact they were down to 10 men, the penalty save, all of that. Everyone was pretty, happy with it to get the draw, because I think we all feared the worst after 10 minutes. But it did at times feel like a victory. Now, of course, it's not a victory and it's only half-time in the tie. But going over to Spain, you've covered Rangers in Europe for many years, but we've nothing to fear, have we? I don't want to speak too soon, but I didn't see that Athletic team as one that we should necessarily fear. We're definitely still right in this tie. They'll be favourites, of course, because they're at home, but we're going over there with a right good chance to get to another European semi-final.
Yeah, I remember having similar confidence. I think it was against Cologne with a 2-1 win and losing 5-0 in Germany. But no, I think Graham Souness was the first manager, or one of the first people I've ever heard about. The consensus was that you played the away game first, and then you knew what to do when you get back home. Souness sort of flipped that and said, well, whatever result you get at home, you then definitely know what you need to do in the second leg. That's kind of slightly different now, again, because of the whole thing with away goals not counting. So literally you're starting 90 minutes at 0-0, and whoever scores the most goals is going to go through. And I think that might just give Rangers a bit of an incentive. Bilbao know they're at home and they're expected to win. If Rangers can frustrate them and keep it tight and not lose any players in the first 15 minutes and basically bring themselves into the game, I think they've got to do the simple things well again, and that is to defend, to frustrate the opposition, not to give the ball away. But if you've got 11 men in the pitch this time, at least you've got half a chance if you do go in the break. You've got some speed, in different positions, either breaking from midfield or out wide, that you have to utilise and you have to use. And I think to that end, it'll be a different Rangers performance again, as long as they can get it right defensively and don't make any blunders or mistakes. I think they'll have a chance of getting a goal. Who knows? One goal might be enough in this tie.
Yeah, and keep 11 men on the park will definitely help. Now, I don't know about you, Stuart, but kind of after the game and kind of driving home last night, obviously you're pleased with the result, but one of the things that keeps kind of, I guess, gnawing at me is that I'm kind of struggling to compute with what we're seeing on a Thursday night versus what we see at the weekend. I just can't figure it out, because some of the performances, I'll be honest, some of the performances we see in the weekend make me feel like this is the poorest Rangers team since we've been back in the top division.
Yeah.
And then what we're seeing on a Thursday night, we're going up against some top European opponents here, and we're going toe to toe, and we're not. It's not as if we're getting embarrassed in any way. I just can't really work it out, to be honest.
If I'm right or I'm wrong, I don't really care. My theory on this is that Rangers find it easier against teams that are actually trying to win the games themselves. And that's what you get in European ties. You don't really get teams, because of the whole away goals rule being scrapped. Teams try to win matches, be it at home or away, and therefore the games tend to be more open. Whereas in SPFL, teams just sit back, and Rangers, for a few years, they just don't have the guile to break teams down. They don't have wingers going round the back of defences. They don't have guys, running through the channels and playing through the gaps. They don't have guys making the defence splitting passes because teams are lying back. And ultimately, if Rangers don't get a breakthrough and don't get a goal, teams just hitting them in a break or the first set piece and go and score themselves. And it's back to square one. Because if Rangers are not scoring when it's 0-0, they're going to find it even more difficult when a team's got a goal to hold on to. And I think that's what's happened throughout the entire season. It's easy to play in Europe. The other thing I would say, and I said this on Twitter or somewhere, that because of the management styles that Rangers have had through the likes of Van Bronckhorst and through the likes of Clement, they've basically built a left-hand drive car for our roads. So they take it onto the continent, it looks great, it performs really well, it goes quite quick, it's got good brakes, it handles really properly. You take that up to Dingwall and it's like, Christ, these roads are tight, what the hell are we doing here? And they've actually built a team that's more suited to European style and European competition than it is domestically. Unfortunately, that's just through bad recruitment. You need to get guys that, enjoy the mince and tatties and enjoy the mince, not just the steak tartare. You know what I mean? You've got to be able to sort of dine out in both sort of domestically and in the sort of continental environment. And I just don't think Rangers have managed that. I think they've got players who are overawed by the physicality in Scotland, whereas in the continent, they do, in the European ties, they do get a bit more time and they're maybe protected a wee bit more. So that's down to actually building a team or guys that have built teams that are more suited for one environment than it is the domestic environment.
Yeah, I think you're definitely wanting something there. Does your theory then, does that make potentially this weekend's game at Pittodrie an ideal next game? Because there's likely to be a bit more intense than your average run-of-the-mill SPFL game because there's the so-called rivalry with Aberdeen. We kind of know what it's like going up there. They don't like us, we don't particularly like them, etc. Does that make this the ideal game in terms of that issue that we've seen with players getting motivated for your kind of run-of-the-mill domestic fixtures?
Can I say something, Brian? I wouldn't even try and motivate them. I would basically play a game and spin the bottle and see who was injured and who was fit and who wanted to play and who Barry Ferguson wants to keep for bigger games or the only big game that he's got left this season. He might have others after it. I would take a complete pub team up there because it doesn't matter anymore. You would imagine going there and suddenly, somebody does a hamstring or somebody gets a kick and that's them out for a couple of weeks. Why would you do that in a game that's utterly meaningless? It's not it's a dead rubber because Rangers' season's dead domestically in the league. And if the Scottish FA and the SPFL can't call games off to help their teams in Europe, do it yourself. Just put a team up there that basically goes through the motions because you want to do bigger and better things in Europe.
I guess that answered my next question was going to be around the team selection. Are you of the opinion that you should just play the kids, let's call it, and just save everyone for Thursday?
I'd have Peter McCloy in goal. I've had John Gregg, playing at least two of the back three. Anybody else that's got a pair of boots that fits them and a strip that
take
fits
your boots
them.
up, Stuart. You might have a chance.
No a chance. Listen. If somebody wants to compare me to the Rhino and bedknobs and broomsticks, and they weren't far wrong. So my only claim to fame apart from is playing goals once for Rangers during pre-season when they ran out of goalkeepers. And my big boots came in handy, making death-defying clearances in that game. But the fact is, this game, it doesn't matter. Only Aberdeen would probably sit and have an open top bus ready to beat Rangers this weekend. But in the grand scheme of things, does it really matter? Does it really matter, given the fact that you've tried your bollocks off in games and tossed them away? Hence the reason there's so many points behind the league leaders. No, so save yourself, keep your powder dry, keep your players safe, and and make the European game your be all and end all this season.
Yeah, and I think you can do that whilst also still recognising that Sunday actually could be a good chance for some other players that haven't really featured or at least haven't started an awful lot. I'm thinking of Danilo and Eggmani, because there was a period under Clement when the two of them played up front and they actually looked a pretty decent partnership. I thought that was when Eggman initially came in and he was kind of scoring goals regularly and Danilo was kind of playing off of him. I thought that was a pretty good partnership, so I'd be quite keen to see something like that again. You can kind of play those two whilst kind of resting your main players, if you like, for Thursday.
I thought you were going to say they'll have a hunt round the different rooms within Ibrox and suddenly come out with Darius Adamchuk and Stanis Densas. Well, look what we found in here. You're still registered, out you go. You're playing in Aberdeen Sunday. Listen, you're justified to play what players you've got at any time. And this whole thing, given the fact there's guys running about with number 47 in their back, don't give us this, well, he's not recognised as a first team player. Everybody that's the first team squad or everybody that's on the boots has the chance of being a first team player. So I would say that you're right. This is the chance this Sunday to go and experiment with one or two players who are on the fringes, but who you might need.
Yeah, definitely. Before we finish up, Stuart, I know Sunday, as you say, bit of a dead rubber, but what's your score prediction?
I'd always go, my favourite is 1-0. That way I can only be horribly wrong. Listen, you would take a win.
Yeah.
Result wise, yeah, you want a win. You don't want a defeat. But I think this weekend you're looking for a performance that kind of mirrors or resembles something you got on the Thursday night, regardless of who the personnel are. I think that would be a step forward.
I think not going 2 goals behind would also be a step forward. We've done
Makes
that
it
the last few away games. We seem to have pulled out that trick. So I'd quite like us not to do that this time. A nice, comfortable 3-0 win would be ideal.
It does make it easier.
Sunday afternoon. Right, I think we'll call it time there. All that's left for me to do is thank my guest, Stuart. Thanks as always.
No, enjoyed it tonight. Yes.
Thank you. As well as being live tonight, the show will be available on all podcasting platforms: iTunes, Spotify, Acast, and Stitcher. We'll be back on Sunday to review all the action of the weekend's match. Stuart, I think it's yourself that's on with Craig and Ben, and I know Ben's going through some family stuff just now, so we'd like to pass on our best wishes. Hopefully,
all the best, Ben.
You just get a result on Sunday and put a smile on his face.
Well, it would put a smile on a few people's faces, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Until next time, bye for now.